people want to be somewhere where they're feeling valued, where they know that they're making a difference, because ultimately, yes, we're a business, but we're a business that take care of people. So to take care of people, we have to take care of our teams.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry look like to you? I'm Katie Polson, a dental hygienist and your host. Welcome to a special episode of Growth in Dentistry for our Practice Growth series. I'm Katie Polson.
I'm Adam Smith.
We are so excited to be able to do these series of episodes on just really highlighting practices who have done exceptional things. But before we get started, I wanted to again invite you guys all to join our Facebook Dental Intelligence podcast community. Come join like-minded data nerds. It's a fun group of people. If you want to get crazy with data and dental, that's the place on Facebook. Please go and rate and review this podcast. We read every one of them. We're grateful for those that have done that for us. If you are a current customer of Dental Intel, we've launched a really great tool in our growth platform that you can be a part of. It's the DI community, and it's a space where customers can talk with each other about how they're implementing using data in their practice, or maybe some of the questions are not even data related, but it's kind of a really, I would say, elite group of people that sit there and chat and talk with each other. It's a great place. So if you're a customer, you can go to that. If you're not a customer, and then if you want to be one, which we would think would be pretty great, you can go to get.dentalintel.net/podcast. To get $50 for completing a demo. And we'll put that link in our show notes. Again, that's get.dentalintel.net/podcast. Okay. So unlike our other episodes, which are great, we kind of attack problems and we have key opinion leaders on, and we kind of talk about best practices for addressing those problems. These episodes are filled with practices out of our, top 10% of our practices who are doing amazing things. And we look at a lot of data. We have 10,000 practices, over 10,000 practices of data that we look at. And we look at a lot of numbers all the time. And so we kind of wanted the practices to let them share their stories and let them shine. And so hopefully there's something that you can take away. Dentistry is, I say it a lot, but it's a lonely gig. And hopefully there's something that you can glean from it. If not anything, at least you can hear this amazing story and amazing background from our great guest here. So I want to introduce Crystal Rowell from Center of Dental Excellence in Florida. Crystal, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, so glad to have you. So give us a little bit of information about yourself first, how you landed in this crazy world of dentistry, and then tell us a little bit about Center of Dental Excellence.
I think that I felt like I was kind of born into dentistry. I started out, my mom was in it, so it's like a family background. And, I can remember being in there mopping floors and vacuuming when I was a little kid. So it just seemed like a natural route for me. I ended up with the Center for Dental Excellence about 2 years ago, right after COVID happened. And the biggest thing when I came in, I was super excited, and this is going to sound crazy, but I was like, great, they already have dental intel. I don't have to do that. I'm like, they're already set up for success. That's awesome, because I am a numbers nerd and I am a DI nerd through and through. So it's amazing to take something like that from dentistry, being in it for over 20 years and, watch the process and have something like this. So it's really exciting for me to be here with you guys today.
Yeah, we're grateful to have you. So tell us a little bit about Center of Dental Excellence. What type of practices? I know you told me before it was started by a periodontist, which I think is really interesting. So tell me the origin story of this, I guess, multiple location practice.
It is. We have 3 practices in the Northeast Florida area, and it kind of started out because our owner is a periodontist. So, I love that, but he was like, it's really hard to go out there and hit the floor trying to get those referrals in, and wait on somebody else to provide that success for you, waiting on those doctors that may like you, may not like you, or whatever. So he took a practice that he had been in for like 10 years. He bought it in 2006 was his first one, and it was perio. And then he bought another one a couple years later. And he converted those in 2016 into general practices. So he didn't have to go out and ask for those referrals. He hired in the general dentist, and if they needed a perio, great. He acted as the associate on staff, and he was able to do all the perio, which is phenomenal. So it was a great process to watch it evolve over the last few years.
Isn't that a smart idea for specialists?
Yeah, definitely.
I think it is, because I know, I mean, like my brother-in-law is an endodontist, and it's just so much of his time is spent getting referrals. Not that every specialist wants to own a lot of general practices, but it's a great option. So really, really cool origin story. Thank you for sharing that. So I got a chance to talk to Crystal before we got on to record today, just to kind of get an idea of some of the things that they've done really well and some of the things that they've struggled with. And one of the things that we had talked about is, because they have 3 locations, staffing is tricky, and it's tricky for everybody right now. Everyone is having a hard time finding employees, whether you're in dentistry or you run a convenience store. But I feel like, particularly in dentistry, we're having a really hard time keeping your hygienists or your more qualified people. So, I guess, what are some of the ways that, I mean, we're talking about in this month, we're kind of talking about how we want to create a team that wants to stay. And so tell me a little bit about like what you do for your culture, and then also some ways the automation has helped. Because I know that you love DI, and that helps with automation, but this doesn't need to be a DI show, but really, I want to focus on you. But yeah,
it's super hard. So I know it's not about DI, but in everything that we do, it really is, right? So instead of me feeding people numbers saying that, this is our goal and this is what we need to do, it's nice because we already have that data, and it's not something that I'm coming in saying this. They can see it for themselves. And I think that goes a long way when you're building a team and you're keeping people engaged, because people want to be somewhere where they're feeling valued, where they know that they're making a difference. Because ultimately, yes, we're a business, but we're a business that take care of people. So to take care of people, we have to take care of our teams. And we make it fun for them, setting their goals so that they can talk about it. And, they kind of compete with each other. And it's a great experience when you're doing it for the right reasons and you're doing it the right way. You have these teams come together, and I know we had a lot of change, but the change that happened, is going to happen anyway, right? We went through this big thing and we're still going through it, but the people that stayed are so much more engaged with the way that we do things because we're running it together. Everybody's got input on how we're going to be successful. And I think that makes a huge difference with anything that you do, right? You want to feel like you've had input, you're working towards a goal you're trying to meet that you set for yourself.
Yeah. How do you do that? How do you engage? Just for an example, how would you engage? Or we talked about critical thinking before. How do you get your team members to do that? Because some of them, it can be pretty tricky.
And it can be something. Okay, so example, last week we had one of the intraoral cameras. You got to use an intraoral camera. Everybody loves that. You got to see a picture's worth a million words. And the button wasn't sticking. And instead of going straight to, oh my gosh, we need a new one, I need to go spend $3,000. They go through the problem solving process. They're like, I did this, and this, and they're starting to treat things like it's theirs. Like they have ownership in the business. And that for me is, I didn't have to necessarily engage them. They engaged me because they were taking ownership. And then we talk about those things and it spreads. It's like viral. They see one person and that thought outside of the box to make a difference and make a change. And then the next person wants to do it. Oh, this is going on over here on the restorative side. I know hygiene took care of this, but the doctor side wants to all of a sudden do it. So it's celebrating it and spreading it. So if one office does well, we take those successes and talk about them company-wide, because we want everybody to celebrate everybody else. Instead of it being, cliquey, we become a unit and a family that are working together.
Yeah, that's tricky to do. And it comes from the top down. If you're always the person that's problem solving for your team members, then they'll always just go to you and they won't learn how to do it on their own. And they don't take ownership. I was talking to Susan Lekowitz earlier today, she's a dental coach, about this particular thing. About, I asked her what's the like, what are the common things that keep employees as lifers, like what, like at a practice, like what do you think are the common things? And we were talking about it being ownership, like you said, like people have to feel like they have ownership in the practice, like they, whatever it is, if it's ownership over the patients, or they have ownership over making sure stockings or something. But I love that. So how do you use, access, you have data and goals that you love to talk about, right? But how do you use those to give them ownership, right? How do they create their ownership instead of telling them, like, wagging your finger?
Yeah, no, and it's nice because for me, like we go through the DI training process, right? I'm like, one of the first things we do is DI learn. And that is one of the most amazing things that could come out, right? So first I want you to understand what you're even looking at. Let's go through this process. You're going to understand the numbers, the goals, and the settings. We talk about what averages are, and we go back through them, whether it be 12 months, 24, 36 months, so that they kind of see the rolling averages and they get an idea of those numbers. And then we take it, and then we'll take a number and be like, whether it's, let's say we want to produce $1,000 today. It's just an easy number. And to do that, what are the procedures within that you can do? So we take that $1,000 and then we set that number. So that's the number we're going to look at the next day. Did we reach it? But then we kind of go down, well, what is that? Could we do for hygiene, make sure we work in an SRP today? So then it's only, we need to work in one patient because I already have 800. If I do one more patient, then I know that we're going to do perio on, that's going to meet our goal. So then you're focusing on taking care of the patient. What patient can I take care of today that's going to increase that number? And I think that getting them focused more on patient engagement, patient satisfaction, and making the most out of every appointment, doing yes and today, and so the patient doesn't have to come back. I think that when you start to kind of analyze it from that standpoint, it makes a huge difference for the team, because you're telling them, yes, it's a number. We're focusing on that number because we are a business, we're running a business, but that number really comes from you taking care of that patient that's in front of you. And I think that that's huge for them, whether it be a hygienist or a dental assistant or the doctor. I mean, their goal is to make sure that they're taking care of the patient themselves and doing the most that you can for them when they're there, so that you're valuing the patient time too. And I think that when they see that doing the right thing for the right reason, the money part comes at the end. I think it's a huge deal.
I like that. There's a lot to unpack in that response. First of all, you have to have the data to be able to get there, right? So you have to know where you are, you have to know where you want to be, and you have to have the data that helps you to see the pathway to get there, right? And then even one step further, you have to work backward to the end user of the services that you provide, and make it make sense to your staff members of, this is how we are providing more value to the end user, but that it also feeds into this that we know ends up getting us where we want to be. That's the ownership, right? Is if ever there's a separation from our end goal is to take the best care of our patients possible, and the ultimate goal of the business is to make money and to be able to support all of the people in there. If there's ever a disconnect at any point in that process, then you get burnout. You get people that are leaving for reasons that they don't see, hey, we don't have the patient's best interests in mind anymore. Or we have the patient's best interests in mind, but we're not getting to where we want to be as a business. And I don't see how to get there, right? I don't have all the pieces in the middle to say, oh, we just need to do this, or we just need to add these things, or we need to do this better, and we get there. So I feel like that was a really, really great response. And there's a lot more to unpack to it than kind of what it sounded like, right? It sounded like, well, we do this and then we work backwards to here. But in keeping people happy, I've run quite a few teams as well. And if they don't know where they stand with the business and with you as a leader, and if they don't know, if they can't put data behind the fact that they're doing a good job, that's when they start to look elsewhere. They might know, hey, I'm really talented. But if you don't have a number that they can say, I'm really talented, the business wants me to do this, and I'm exceeding that. We're self-interested, right? We're going to protect ourselves. So if there's another opportunity where I can hedge, I'm like, so things are a little bit, I'm not really sure here. I'm going to go and hedge that and start looking at, okay, is there someone that's willing to pay me the same or more that I can make sure I have as a backup option if things aren't going the right way here. So making that clear path from we need to provide the best experience possible and the best service possible to our patients. And B, we want to get to here as a business, here are the things that we need to do in between, and here's how the puzzle fits together. That's a huge piece of keeping all of your employees happy.
When you were talking, I was thinking actually of a cycle. Like you've got data, patient engagement, like your team, patient engagement, and taking care of your patient, and then your team, and then data. Like it's the circle that like feeds. And I love that you talked about how your team has like you're not the gatekeeper of the numbers.
Nope.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah. Like you've taught them how to interpret the data and then also be in charge of their own goals, which is really powerful because there's a lot of people even that use our software and they're the admins of Dental Intel, and nobody else has access to a lot of the numbers because they don't want their teams to see that, which to each their own. But right. But you've given them the tools and the power to be able to take care of that.
Knowledge is power. I mean, knowledge really is power. And I'm okay. So it goes back to Simon Sinek, right? When everybody's seen or read the book, the why. Let's get to the why. And if we start here and we expand that out, and everybody understands what the core is, it makes a huge difference. And it's just expressing that to the team so that from the beginning there is no surprise. It's not like, hey, this changed and I know I said this, but this is what the reality is. You can't have that. You have to be transparent from the beginning.
Yeah, really good.
Definitely.
You touched on it just a little bit, and I want to expand on it because this is one of the things that in all of your 3 locations you guys do exceptionally well, which is perio. And I realized that you were started by a periodontist. Mm-hmm. So if there's one thing that other 3 practices should be good at, it's perio. But but at Dental Intel, we have a metric of your perio patient percentage, or the amount of perio patients you have in total to all of your total patients should be a certain percentage. And we say it should be over 30%. Now, I don't see that very often. I see 10%, even in my own practice. We're at 10%, which is on the below, like average is maybe about 15 and above is 30. And I'm telling you, as a hygienist, is something that I do look at a lot as practices that are above 30%. And the reason why Dental Intel came up with that number, and I realize that this can be kind of a controversial data number for some reason to focus on, because some people feel like it's maybe, I don't know, overselling, but we took that number based off of the perio percentage of Americans, like the number of Americans that have periodontal disease should reflect in our practices. And that's where we have come up with that data point. So talk to me a little bit about the philosophy of treating periodontal disease within your practices.
I think that that to me, okay, we obviously, we have an advantage, right? We have a periodontist, but to watch hygiene, especially when you have new hygiene coming in, that they're new to the field, they're learning, right? They're coming straight out of school, so they know everything by the book, A, B, C. Well, to get them in and have them watch that patient that's coming in and getting diagnosed, and they're starting to do SRPs, and then they're like, okay, we have to refer to the periodontist because we still have pocketing, or there's recession, or there's something going on. It's amazing to watch how excited they get to see those patients through the process from start to finish, because you get to see the progress that they're making. You get to see how much different it is for them when they come in. Like the pocketing is different, the gums look better, the patients talk about, it feeling better, they're not seeing as much bleeding. It's amazing to watch them get so excited about it. And I think I told you a little bit, like, when we have the hygiene meetings, how excited they get about talking about getting patients to understand it and the value, and that they talk a lot about how it affects the overall body, right? We're not just talking about a mouth, it's not just teeth, it's something that affects your entire oral systemic system, and they get so excited. And I love that. You can't buy enthusiasm like that or care, right? Because they genuinely care how they're taking care of those patients, and they really believe in it. And that's not something you can teach anyone. That's something that you can teach them, but you can't really have them. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, no, it
like,
makes a lot of sense to me. As you were talking, I was thinking of how you become, as a hygienist right out of dental hygiene school, you are really excited, but you don't have like the knowledge base. I mean, you don't have the, what do I say? It's not the courage. It's like the gumption, I guess, to like diagnose the way you see it. And in a lot of states, you don't have, I mean, the dentist has to back you up on that. And a lot of dentists you just kind of go wherever they tell you. I mean, there's been plenty of times where I diagnosed and it was like, well, it's okay, And so I think, yeah. And so I think one thing that stuck out to me is you said that they have hygiene meetings. You may not be involved in that, but if you are, or if you know anything about what goes on in those meetings, because I think there's a lot to be said about all the hygienists getting calibrated.
They do. I mean, we usually sit down and kind of go over it just to review. So I'll sit down and go over the numbers part of mine. Like me, I get to be the data. Everybody's like, okay, where's my DI in there? I'm like, okay, look, here's your numbers. Here's your percentages. So we kind of go over it beforehand, right? So they definitely want to know what they're doing from a treatment planning process, like where are we at in our percentages. So we kind of review that ahead of time when I meet with the mentor before they actually go do their hygiene meetings. And then they usually do like an old, like, here's the old meeting, here's the new meeting, what changed from the last time, same kind of format, right? You got to look back to see what went well, what didn't go well, moving forward, what are future things that they want to talk about. So it's interesting to see how they come together to form that themselves. Like I'm not giving you any data, anything other than data. I'm giving you the information, and you're creating that success. And it really is powerful. Like it is nice to know that I can be somewhere else, but I know that team is there and they're going to make the best decisions, not only for the patient, but for the business. And then to watch that data continue to change, to me, because I am a numbers person, it's amazing. I'm like, I know what they're doing. I can see it. I can hear the patients. I get the feedback. And then I get to watch it when I get my numbers monthly, or when I'm looking at it daily, when I would log in to go over huddle with them in the mornings. It's encouraging to see how amazing people are when they come together and you give them the power to be amazing.
Yeah. What are some of the, I mean, because being someone that has proposed scaling and root planing many a time, you've got pretty good case acceptance, obviously, because your perio patient percentage is over 30%. So as a fly on the wall in your practices, like what tools or what's being said to these patients to increase that case acceptance, to get buy-in from the patients to believe? I know you talked about total health, and it might seem trivial, but to kind of get more deep onto like what, I mean, if a hygienist was listening, like I want to increase my perio percentage, like what advice can you give to them?
They do talk about the total health and a lot of that and how it affects your overall systemic stuff. They're also really good about making sure that they sit down and go over the x-rays, and they can show them, the calculus on the x-rays. This is what this little spot is right here. They show them the numbers. I think there's something about calling out your perio charting numbers when you're doing that.
So they say them out loud when they're doing them. Okay.
And I think that's powerful. They tell them ahead of time, if it's between this number and this number, we're good. But if we get between here and here, then, it may be some areas we need to talk about, maybe working on. I think that's huge for them. They also talk about, when they're doing arrest and any of that kind of stuff, what the benefits of that are. I think that they go through and they actually sit down and educate the patient. I know we have a lot of videos that they'll show them too. One of the big ones is the systemic health one. And I think that educates the patients very well on how it does affect your total body. And that really is what we focus on when we're doing it. And you come back when you work for a periodontist, it's amazing because he gives you more information on that, like in how bacteria works and how you're talking about biofilm and how you talk about calculus and all of these different things. And a big thing that the hygienist taught me that I didn't know, is that when they talk about bone loss, they talk about it being irreversible bone loss. And some words that they use are really powerful tools for them because it is irreversible. We can't replace the bone that we lose in our mouth. And I think that it clicks for patients when they hear that and they start to understand that. And I think that it's different too when you don't feel like you're being sold something and you're actually being shown why and how it relates to you specifically.
Yeah. It sounds, because perio is really tricky. It's not something that people notice happening in their mouth until their teeth fall out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tricky thing to get people to buy in from. And it sounds like you spend a lot of time educating, like your team spend a lot of time educating. How much time do you guys attribute to this? And like how much time does a hygienist have?
An hour and a half for a new patient exam. Yeah. And that does not necessarily include a cleaning. So we really sit down and educate the patient. I think that your first experience in a practice is important because you're figuring out if you're a good fit, right? They want to know if they like us or not. Is it great for chair time? Probably not,
No,
but
yeah.
I'm
noticing that more and more.
This is really interesting. We've had, this is our third conversation that we've had with some top performing practices, and they've all brought this up that they extend additional time for
new patient,
new patient exams.
Anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. And it's so opposite of what people that coaches tell them to do. Interesting.
And it's they perform better across the board than the majority of the other practices that are on our software. So there's something to be said there.
Yeah, really.
I think it's huge.
Well, it's just one of those things that you think, why would I spend another hour with and do the patients want to be there? But obviously, based off of case acceptance, it obviously shows in the numbers.
Yep. Case
and it pays
acceptance,
off.
retention,
Yeah.
all of the things follow when the patient gets the idea that you really care about them and you're taking the time to understand them.
Yeah.
Wow. And you don't make it cookie cutter in that sense. I mean,
yeah,
you have this person educating you, you have this one person for an hour and a half that's making everything about you. And I think that, it's not our biggest money maker. That's not what it is. Not that chair time right then to me is in the end, because it is retention. It is case acceptance. It is taking care of the patient with everything that you possibly can. You're giving them all the tools that they need to be successful and to get healthy.
Yeah, I say this a lot. It's my tagline, and I will allow anyone to steal it, but then you have to give me credit. And that is the hygienist should be the resident educator in your practice. And sounds like that's really what they are. And you have this person that you pay who went to school specifically to study this one thing. But they also have the ability to educate on and prep the patient for all these other things. And if you can give them an hour and a half to 2 hours of chair time, obviously for a new patient, look at, Center of Dental Excellence, see what it does. It's pretty cool, pretty cool. There's a whole other section. So we'll move away from clinical and we're going to worry about your land, which is getting paid for all the stuff that you guys do.
That's right.
Which is just as important. Your guys' collection for net percentage is over 100% in all three of your practices. So you're collecting what you do, which is really nice to say, because some practices are not there. So what are some of the top systems that you would attribute to that?
So Okay, so we go back. We know I love DI, but it's going to go back to the very beginning, right? We are, depending on the office, we'll just average it out and say 50% insurance based. So on 50% of the patients that are coming in our office, they have insurance. So for me, 20 years of knowing what insurance is going to pay or not going to pay, I teach my admin team, don't estimate insurance to pay for something you know they're going to decline. I would rather give that money back to the patient and be a hero than to send them a bill. Any day. I would rather be like, guess what? We got them to pay it. Not, we knew that they weren't, but you know, you owe us some money. It just, there's a different feel from a patient standpoint with that. So I think that that's big with the insurance part of it. But you have to follow up with that, right? And that's where DI comes in. It's showing me patients that have. And when I was working front desk and I was doing nothing else but front desk, I didn't have this system in place. We didn't have DI. I had like binder after binder after binder. Let me go through the insurance binder. Let me go through the payment plan binder. Let me go through
Oh gosh,
aging binder. I'm
sounds
like
a nightmare, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'm like, and now it's like, you know, hey, what's on your bell for today? And then you have all of your follow-up right there. It's amazing. So to be able to take it and say, hey, these items that we all used to have a binder for, you know, 5 different binders we had to work. We get to split that up between all the admin team to keep our numbers where they're supposed to be, because that's what we can do, right? We can't produce it, but we can collect it. That's how we contribute the best to the business, helping the patients say yes and collecting it. It's been a huge turnaround, because when I came back 2 years ago, our collection percentage was around 94%. So I made it my personal mission to come in and be like, okay, how can we get everybody excited about collecting money? Because that's the one thing nobody wants to do. They don't want to come in and be like, okay, money, please. You know, that's the most uncomfortable conversation for people to get used to doing when you're training and you're teaching. And it's made it so much easier. When DI came out with the payments, you know, we were already doing electronic statements and stuff like that, but to be able to send a text message for a patient to just pay that balance it's been huge for us. Based on, so I have different demographics in each practice. Like my St. Augustine is a lot older of a demographic, and I was like, oh gosh, you know, I really wonder how this is going to work for them.
Yeah, for sure. We get that question a lot.
Right. They had the highest return on paying via the text message. And I did not expect that. Now, I think that it's great that you can do that, right? It takes away people calling and asking for money, which helps the staff not feel weird. It helps the patient not feel like they did something wrong. And it's been a huge asset for us to be able to do that and, you know, create that system that everybody's applying every day. But to see it be so successful in every demographic was a huge eye opener, and it was amazing. I was like, I
love that you brought that up, because that's one of the barriers I think that a lot of people have, is they think it's just not going to work for my practice, right? Like, and I guess, how do you know unless you try? Obviously, right? Like, had you just assumed, then you would have never done it,
right?
Yeah.
And I would rather try anything. I mean, it's not going to hurt you to try it, right? I'm like, before, when you doubt it, I'm like, I'm telling you, from my demographic, I have high-end, older demographic to, you know, working class, blue collar, to that business class. And it works so well. But to know that it hit the one demographic I thought I was going to have the toughest time with, and it'd be so successful, it was a mind-blowing moment. I was like, I love this. So to be able to go back to Dr. Strout and be like, look at how amazing this worked. It was nice. It was like that pat on the back, like, yeah. For sure.
That's awesome. And 94% to 100%, like, it's like both of those are still good, right? Like a lot of people that might be listening would be like, oh, I'd love to have 94%. But
right.
You also have to remember that 6% is pure profits. You've already paid all the costs on it. So when accounts receivable gets behind, it's not like, oh, well, you know, we're only 25% profitable or 30% profitable, so it's not that much. It's, well, you've already paid all those costs. So whatever you can increase that by, that 6% across 3 practices is huge. That's a massive impact that you've been able to make in 2 years to profitability. It brings all of the other costs of the practice, you kind of look at percentages. And as that accounts receivable goes down, all of those percentages come better into line where they're supposed to be. So that's amazing. And it's
Yeah.
really cool to hear that the older demographic, that's always a question that, so I owned part of a practice before, and we had an older demographic as well. And we were going from, this is several years ago, but we were going from calling and reminding them about their appointments to an appointment reminder software. And we're like, how are they going to react? We don't know. They loved it. Right. So always try it. And I'll say this as well. Don't take feedback from one person as the overall impression that people have from it. Because we did have people that would say, can you just call me? Like I'd rather have a call than a text. But for 98% of those people, they loved the text messages. So the fact that you gave it time to work and then pulled the data on and said, wow, they actually respond the best to that. That's amazing to hear.
Yeah, I love that. And you spend a lot of time training your team, right? I mean, you talked about training your admin team on insurances and things like that. And I'm sure that it's a lot easier to train them on sending a text message and following up with that.
So much easier. It is so much easier. And like to know that you have, because I think that knowledge is power, and that's what you give me the knowledge that I need from a business standpoint, and DI is amazing with that. But I get to take everything that I've learned, because I think that your goal is to have everybody around you be the best that they can be. And as a leader, I feel like that's what I should be doing. If you want to grow, I want to help you grow. I want to help you be better than me. I want you to start being the teacher. I want you to teach me something new. And I think that I can't help it. I love that stuff.
Because you've had like 20 years, and I love, before we talked about insurance claims, and I know that some people, as unsexy as insurance claims can be, we're going to get into it just a little bit, because I think there's a lot to learn from you. I mean, I love that you're able to look at somebody's insurance and know if they're going to pay or not. I think that's incredible to me, because I would not be able to do that. So talk to me about your system for collecting on claims, because I know that's not something we at Dental Intel, I mean, we can give you the data on which ones kind of work the best, or which ones maybe you should get rid of. But as far as the system on collecting, give me that, those details.
So for me, because we have 3 locations, instead of having a traditional check come to the office, I signed all of the offices up and put them on EFT. So I already know the money's in the bank, which is nice. That takes away that part of it. So I don't have to worry about, a check getting lost or something not showing up. So we went back through and we did, I had a meeting with all the admin team, and we went through and I had to teach them, here's the insurances, this is the website, and, this is how we go through each insurance company to make sure that we're posting the payment and getting that all updated. And what they do is now they can go through and they do it. And as they're learning, I'll still review to help them. I'll jump on and be able to remotely go through it and, watch them post it and help them post those payments so that they're learning, because I think that, that's what you do is you teach. And then we can take it a step further, because then they know that their payment is not going to go, or that payment's been made or didn't get made, or whatever the situation might be with the insurance company. They can actually send a text right away to the patient. This is what your insurance paid, here's your balance due. So it's more of a real-time kind of situation going on, which makes it a lot easier. But knowing that, here's the list of things that we know insurance doesn't typically pay for. So in the beginning, I'm going to take, things like arrestin. You're going to have a hard time getting paid for arrestin. You're going to have a hard time getting paid for a buildup. You're going to have a hard time getting paid for certain procedures that insurances want to downgrade or code to bundle the code with, and be like, oh, we're not going to add that. Well, the patient still ends up being responsible based on the EOB, but we know that they come back after looking at this for so long that it's not going to get covered, and that's what they do. That they do the treatment plan originally like that for the patient. This is submitted. We're going to submit this. We're going to try and get it paid from your insurance company, but we want you to know that it's not something that's typically covered by them. They try to downgrade it or bundle it. So I think, again, it's just being honest with the patients from the beginning too, because they're going to appreciate that. And then the insurance, when they come back in and the girls are learning to post those payments because they're electronic, they get to see that those codes are coming in. And it's nice when they realize there's a new code. Hey, I've seen, 12 claims and this insurance company isn't picking up this code. So we can kind of dig in deeper and talk to the insurance at that point to see if it's something our rep can help us with. We actually ended up going out of network with most insurances and kind of we're in network, but we did it with like a third party kind of contract to make it easier. And I don't think that a lot of doctors really know about that, and I think that we talk about the fees and there's a lot of insurance. I'm going off topic. Sorry.
No, you're good. It's good. Keep going. Because it might seem not interested. I know that there are people that are interested in this. I know there are office managers that are listening and being like, I don't know how to do this.
So I'm like, the posting a payment, that's the easy part. Understanding how insurance tries to use that business that they have, which is to not pay the doctor, is huge to me. So I think it's important that you start to learn, like, if you're in network with this insurance, they're saying you have to take this fee schedule. And that's not necessarily true. There's very few insurances that you won't be able to negotiate a higher fee with, or be like, I may go out of network with you directly, say MetLife, for instance, their fee schedule is very, very low. So if you were to contract with them directly, you're going to take a huge loss. Usually 50 to 60%, you're going to take a reduced from your UCR fee. But if you credential yourself with, say, this third party that MetLife accepts, they have a couple like GEHA Connection or Zealous is another one, that they will negotiate the fee schedule. MetLife will then accept that fee schedule. So then you're getting a fee that's only maybe a 20% reduction, but it's still much higher than every other fee that you can get, and way closer to what your UCR would be. And I think that there's a huge difference in that, because there's so many insurances that are not wanting to negotiate and they keep dropping their fees constantly on dentists, and it's huge. And it really, it's not, you have everything going up 300% and you have insurances that are dropping dentist fees left and right. And I don't, it's not fair to the doctors. That's not fair to offices, or it's fair to patients, sure. But you can't make money on a $40 cleaning and insurance is trying to pay you for.
Right. That it seems like a lifetime of knowledge. And
definitely. There are companies that will do that kind of negotiating and bundling and the fee negotiations for you. It's awesome that you understand a lot of that already.
Yeah.
One thing that I really liked is, I'm trying to remember, I think it's called cognitive dissonance, something that I remember vaguely from psychology in college, but it's basically the fact that if my expectation is different from what actually happens, the direction that it's different in determines whether I'm happy with it or whether I'm mad about it, right? So if I get a C on a test, that's the fact of the matter. I got a C on this test. If I was expecting an A on the test and I got a C on the test, I'm mad. If I was expecting an F on the test, but I got a C on the test, I'm happy, right? So you talked about, okay, knowing when the insurance is not going to pay and letting the patient know, so that ideally you're coming in from the, hey, I was expecting an F, but I actually got a C. If I'm expecting an F and I get an F, it's kind of like, that's what I was expecting, right? So you're either coming in, I was expecting this and I got this, or if it comes back, that the insurance does decide to pay, I'm even happier, because then I got a C, right? So I like that aspect of it. And I think a lot of people have an idea about that. Like, they kind of know when they're presenting, this is probably not going to get covered, but but they're not vocalizing it, and they're not collecting to a point where, in the off chance that the insurance does pay, they're giving a reimbursement rather than asking 80% of people to pay the difference that they probably knew was not going to happen there as well. So that's a really good point.
I think it happens a lot more in dentistry too, that because a lot of people they don't know, they think their dental insurance works like the medical insurance.
They do.
The patient population is just not educated enough. And unfortunately, it takes practices like you guys to educate them. And it takes more time, but it takes so much more time to educate them, but it does not work the same way. And I think a lot of patients think, I'm paying you now, I'm never going to see a bill from you, because when I go to my doctor, I pay my copay and then I pay the rest of it after. Like in their mind, they're done. Right. And so I think that is a really great thing that you're doing with your teams, is trying to train them to, I don't know, prep the patient and like educate them, because it's conflict, which nobody likes to do. And it takes more time. So both of those things are going to make it so team members don't want to do it. But
it's trying to get rid of that taboo feel that kind of comes with it, right? That thing that makes everybody a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's not an easy job. I mean, bless the people that are in patient collections, because my gosh, I mean, my office, her name's Billy. She does all the insurance claims, and she's a dear soul, and I love her so much. My gosh, it's such a hard job. Well, I have learned a lot. I've loved that as we continue to do this in these top practices, that we're seeing trends. It's really awesome. And they're lucky to have you, Crystal. I hope they know that. Yeah, you're doing such great things, and the practice is doing such great things. And thank you for being a dental intel advocate. We really appreciate it. Yeah, we ask the same question for everyone that comes on the podcast, because growth means so many different things to everyone. But what does growth in dentistry mean to you?
That's a lot to unpack. Actually, growth in dentistry to me is tomorrow being better than today, and every day after that's even better than the one before.
Oh man, that's a really good answer. That might have to be our slogan.
Okay,
we'll give you the credit. We'll give you the credit. Just like Katie requires her credit.
Oh, geez. Well, this has been Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast. Again, thank you so much, Crystal, from Center of Dental Excellence. I want to say dental intelligence, dental excellence in Florida. And we're grateful that you could be on. You can find in our show notes that if you want to get that demo for $50 to complete the demo, you can go to our show notes to get that link. And thank you so much. Thank you to our marketing department for all their work on this podcast. I'm Katie Polson. Keep growing.